Welcome to Self-Centered Living, a podcast that serves as a vital platform for women of color to take charge of our narratives and where our voices are amplified. I'm your host, Trish, and here we delve into our diverse experiences and rich humanity through a blend of personal stories and insightful discussions with a range of guests. Our aim is to foster meaningful connections and understanding among our listeners. Reflecting on our formative years through young adulthood can provide valuable insights into how external factors such as parents, schools, friend groups, and religious institutions influence our decisions. These forces can often steer us towards choices that align with societal norms, and in the case of our parents, what they believe will keep us safe and uphold their values. And if we're being honest, what will keep them from being embarrassed. However, those who trust their intuitive insights and pursue their curiosities can stand out as unique individuals in a society prioritizing conformity over originality. Instead, they heed a deeper internal voice, not the one that criticizes our appearance or second guesses our outfit choices each morning, but an innate voice deep within and beyond the critical chatter and collective noise. MawuLisa, my guest for this episode, exemplifies this authenticity. Despite the challenges that come with following one's intuition, such as potential isolation or ostracizing, her journey has been enriched by timely mentors and her ability to find supportive community. This has guided her toward her true calling as a multifaceted healing practitioner. Years ago, I sought MawuLisa's expertise to heal my voice, which I had been losing frequently, and to open my throat, a space that I'd always been protective of. On a symbolic level, I recognized the need for somatic bodywork to clear obstacles hindering my healing and self expression. My experiences with her made a lasting impression. She was one of the first individuals I thought of when crafting this podcast series. MawuLisa beautifully balances nurturing her own needs while being attuned to her connection with the larger community. She demonstrates how individual wellness and community health are intertwined, creating a richer expression of her identity. This episode promises to provoke thoughtful reflection. Pay special attention to how MawuLisa shares her story, her joyful and accepting demeanor, her tone, her pacing. Some moments are poetic as they are eye-opening. Consider your narrative as you listen. What is your relationship with your story? How does your tone and pace reflect your experience? Where do you feel vulnerable when telling your story? And what aspects of your narrative spark excitement when you share them? As I said, this promises to be a thought provoking episode. I'll leave you to enjoy it. I'm lucky to be here with MawuLisa. I know you because I came to you for the work you do as a somatic bodywork practitioner. But that's not all you do. That's not all there is to you. So if you were to say what your vocation is, what would you say it is?
I move through the world as a somatic body worker, practitioner, an embodiment teacher and coach, a trauma healing midwife, a grief doula, a ritualist. I move through the world as a diviner and an Orisha priest. I move through the world as a song weaver, as a mother, as a lover of the healing arts, and a deep commitment to bring healing and restoration practices and support to justice warriors and those who are fighting for our liberation on the front lines. I'm very committed to supporting our liberation warriors. There's so much in this world that requires our attention and the energy of organizers and movement builders and those who are here to protect our waters and our environment, and those who are here to make sure there is social conditions that allow us to thrive. For anyone who is saying yes to that work, I'm in a deep commitment of bringing all of my healing medicine basket to their disposal and in service to their healing and wholeness.
That is a lot. It makes me think about what you have been impressing on your clients, your specific words. Keep your cup full. It's never sexy pouring from spittle dregs. I think about all that you do and our commitment to. It requires immense amount of capacity. I'm curious, where did that commitment and capacity originate? You were born in Louisiana, the youngest of three, and raised Jehovah Witness. Tell me a little bit about that experience and the way in which it may have prepared and equipped you for the magnitude of your work.
Yes. There are many moments that I talk about what I need to recover from growing up in a religious cult as a Jehovah's Witness. But in this moment, I feel moved to name what I actually received from that particular upbringing. And I think what I received from that upbringing was an unshakable knowing about the power and potency of spiritual community. I am as good as the people that I surround myself with, and to be and practice discretion with who I spend my time with and who I allow into my inner circle to nourish me and share my life and my joys and my triumphs and my sorrows with, to be really uh, practice a lot of discretion. There's a phrase that I grew up with: bad association spoils useful habits. Anybody who grew up Jehovah's Witness will be like, yeah, I know that phrase, but it's a real one. It's a keeper. And there's a lot of truth to it. I also think that growing up Jehovah's Witness prepared me for this vision or knowing of our capacity to bring heaven on earth. The stories, the evolution stories inside of Jehovah's Witness, there's, no such thing as hell, and that there's only a few who ascend to heaven, but the majority of people that are, live a good life and are in harmony with their karma, the world will be restructured and converted into a paradise, and the meek ones will inherit the earth. And, there's a lot of that I'm like, okay. And then what I know about every religious institution and structure, there is some piece of truth embedded in all of them, or else people wouldn't gravitate to them if there wasn't some small piece of truth embedded in all of them. So I think that worldview, what it honed me towards was, how do I use my energy to create the conditions of paradise on earth, knowing that it's not gonna just be handed to us on a platter, but that we have to work for those conditions to make those conditions possible. And we do that by joining together in collective efforts to shape these larger systems that we have to live inside of, because that's not the work for a single individual. It takes a collective to do that. And I remember the power and potency of witnesses to literally build an entire kingdom hall over a weekend. And that, like, literally, tutor to the tutor, erect a total church, a kingdom hall, a place of worship, from the ground to the electricity to the structure to the wiring to the paint, everything in a weekend. And the magnitude of collective work that was required to do that, and the success, that it completely went up in the weekend. What that was like to be a part of that collective effort and to bring my piece to that, even if it was just about making sure people had something nice and cool to drink who were up there on the roofs hammering and working, but to bring my piece to the collectivity of that project to build something that would be of benefit to the collective. And so those were things that I feel like my upbringing wired me to value first and foremost my relationship to the divine, and to know that divinity manifests through people, and to really learn to see the divine in myself and in others. Yeah, I'm grateful for those pieces that I was able to distill and harvest and transform from growing up inside of those religious conditions.
Was there anything specific about Louisiana, the land, the spirit of the land, that was useful or helped you prepare better for your journey, in addition to the religious structure that you grew up in?
Recently, I have been sitting with the imagery of rooting in water. And if if you're traveling in Louisiana, say on the way from Baton Rouge to like Lafayette or Lake Charles, I believe you cross over the Atchafalaya Basin. And when you're crossing the bridge and you look out over the water, you see these giant trees that have their roots right in the middle of, the water, these swampy lands that have these trees that are literally rooting in water. There's something about that image that I feel like has prepared me to find my roots, even in the transitioning nature of being in water. It's not like rooting in soil that feels like permanent. There's this wisdom about how to create roots even in the impermanence and flow of water. And there's something about that imagery that I feel like lives deep in my bones, that lives deep in my soul, and that has shaped me in some pretty profound ways. And I think I'm still sitting with that and digesting that and letting something unfold or continue to unfold about what that land taught me, what that land prepared me for. Yeah. And I miss the wet, moist heat of the South.
You do.
I do. I think one moment of being on vacation with my beloved who passed away, Chef Yolanda Hendricks, for my birthday, she would take me to Barbados. And what I always remembered was like how filled out in myself I felt in the heat and moistness of that climate. I'm able to access so much width in my body. Like, all I want to do is just expand all the way out to my edges in that kind of warmth. And I feel the sexiest when I'm in the Caribbean, that moisture, that warmth, to be right there witnessing those Caribbean waters, the colors, the coral reef, but just something about the tackiness and the warmth and the moistness of that environment that just allows my body to expand all the way out to my edges and take up so much space in myself. And there's a sensuousness in it that is just undeniable.
It's interesting the way you say Barbados makes you feel. You were relating it to the island's climate, its moisture, the warmth, the Caribbean waters, the colors that allows for your expansion. Bajans are prideful people. I would say they're in touch with their dignity and they have self-regard. While the island was not as successful as Haiti to gain its independence from revolting, there was, for the British Caribbean, one of the more serious rebellions in 1816 on Barbados. So I'm also going back to what you were saying around your intentionality, around the people that you make yourself available to, and your work available to, those who are justice and liberation warriors, stewards of the land, because I believe that that spirit is very much on that island. So it makes even more sense to me that you would be able to fill out to your edges in Barbados. I'm also going back to Louisiana and going back to talking about the land and the land's influence on you. You describing the roots and the water representing impermanence. I'm just thinking about your ability to root yourself in an impermanence, because when I met you, you were in California.
Yes.
That's where I came to see you to get my body work. Now you're in Massachusetts. I also know that you spent time in Santa Fe. So these roots, your ability to root yourself, I could see how it makes sense and how this ability has served you. How did you get from Louisiana to Santa Fe? Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Yes. The college tour, there was something that was like, I remember going to the school fair and there was a booth there for the College of Santa Fe. I don't know, something compelled me. And also something in my spirit just kept whispering, go west, just go west, just go. And part of that was survival. At the time, I had become friends with a group of folks that were, I was into all kinds of experiential substances, whether it was marijuana or I remember, you know, I had my moment with the codeine, the pills, the Xanax. We would sprinkle codeine on top of weed and smoke it. We were doing all kinds of things, but we said, yeah,
Really? Yeah.
I had my wild out Oh, absolutely. I had my, wild out years in high school, but we had a pact and we said we were never gonna graduate to the hard stuff like, the cocaine, the heroin, and this, the that. I just remember my best friend at the time crossed over that line. And what I recognized was that there were a lot of people that I was surrounded with that were crossing these lines. And basically, it was like, if I don't get out of this environment, the temptation would just be too great to go down some roads that I had no business going down. So there was a definite whisper in my spirit that was like, you got to get out of here. And, there are no mistakes. Santa Fe, New Mexico, the College of Santa Fe was what called me. And so I went and spent 11 years in New Mexico. New Mexico was where I met my son's father in the context of a West African dance class. Um,
Wow.
we started, checking each other out. And at the time, I was doing a year of celibacy. So there was like no sexuality that could happen between us, but we were definitely drawn to each other. Then he had to go back to Nigeria, and some friends and community, they were like, we're going to go take a trip to Nigeria. Why don't you come with us? And, you can be reunited with this man and, just have this little adventure. And so I prayed on it. I did some altar work around it. And I ended up going to Nigeria where my son was conceived. And I got pregnant there with my son. And that's a whole other story of uh, playing around in Oshogbo at the Oshun shrine. I didn't even know what I was doing. I had no idea that people would journey like Mecca to the Oshun shrine for fertility prayers. And here I was like, oh, this is cute, the Oshun shrine. And the waters were low and I'm out there touching the statue and, had no idea. And then sure enough, like a week and a half later, I was pregnant.
Oh, wow. And I need to say, your son, he's beautiful. He's beautiful because I recently you shared a picture with me. He's absolutely beautiful.
He really is.
So,
He is a brilliant ball of
yeah.
light. That's all I'm going to say about him, though. I promised him I'd never
Yes,
talk about
yes,
him on a
yes.
podcast again.
I understand that. So, yeah,
Yeah.
agree. You're in Nigeria, you conceive. You spent
Yeah.
11 years in Santa Fe. You talked about doing your altar work before going. When did you start feeling this divine feminine call? Because I think that's something that you and I share. Our trajectories may be different, but this regard for and this living with divine feminine and allowing that to lead us in ways that are more intuitive, more nurturing, more empathetic, more of a balance between the energies versus it being more one or the other. When did you recognize and how did that divine feminine pull show up for you?
One thing that's true about me is that I have always had this dynamic play between spirituality and my politics.
Mm.
I think there was something connected for me with my awakening to the impacts of patriarchy. This is like high school, early college. My awakening to the impacts of patriarchy, to heteronormativity, that also aligned me to feeling a thirst to find the face of God expressed through the divine feminine was just, I don't even know if I can, in this moment, trace back the origin story, but at some point it just became really clear to me that for the salvation of my soul, I needed to find a connection to the divine that I could relate to inside of myself and my soul and my body. It's really hard out here to feel divinity inside of you when you don't have any representations of divinity that look like you. For all of us who were children of the slave trade and victims of Christian colonization, a white deity was shoved in our face. And it's really hard to locate your own divinity when what you're told to look to as divinity looks nothing like you. And actually, not only looks nothing like you, but looks exactly like the people who are exploiting you and enslaving you. That has its impact on the psychology of someone and a soul level impact. I became thirsty to find expressions of the divine feminine. And I think that's what took me down the road of, you know, exploring the goddess, whether it was the feminine expression of the divine, Shekinah in the Judaic faith, Oshun, Yemaya as Orisha, Brigitte, Hecate. I
Mm.
looked for goddesses in Greek mythology. I looked for goddesses in wherever I could find them, wherever. And as I sit right here, I don't know when I found this book, but I found this book, The Great Cosmic Mother by Monica Sjöö,
Wow.
Rediscovering the Religion of the Earth. This was a college find, late in high school college find, that definitely also awakened me and shaped me. I remember falling in love with Starhawk as another person who blended the political and the spiritual. Um, yeah, those became role models for me. I can remember being totally fascinated by Marie Laveau and her legacy in Louisiana as being a spiritual powerhouse and also a cultural worker and someone who shaped the cultural landscape in New Orleans as well, and also participated in probably the Underground Railroad and used her hoodoo and her magic in service to supporting the liberation um, of folks who were enslaved or escaping Jim Crow in that moment. All of those stories just like inspired me and shaped my listening for the expression of divinity in the feminine body.
I appreciate you naming all the names and the influences because, to your point, is you want to be able to see what you could be, or you want to be able to see something that you could see yourself in, something to make you feel like there's a connection. And so I see it being important to have those models, even the ones that you were naming that weren't necessarily Afro deities. I say deities, but I regard them as streams of consciousness and energies more than deities. At least that's how I hold it. You said Durga, you said Hecate. These are not goddesses to be messed with.
No.
So there's power there. Just so people could understand what you're looking to and what's shaping you. You also have experience that shaped you. When you were in Santa Fe, you studied clinical psychology. I just wanted to talk a little bit of the work that you were doing, the work that was preparing you for more of the work you do today that really built capacity to do all that you're doing and whole and wanting to be a base and a place of support for those who are freedom fighters. Could you talk a little bit about that work?
Yes. I feel like academia definitely had its place in shaping me, but it wasn't my primary shaper. I want to be really clear about that. Yes, I studied clinical psychology and, some of that blended into music therapy, sociology. Yes, those things are true. So much of my training, I feel like, came to me also through the experience of motherhood and then the experience of working, the local rape crisis center in Santa Fe at the time. I started in Santa Fe, the Santa Fe Rape Crisis Center. And there was someone who really kind of handpicked me to take over her position as director of this program called YODA, Youth Organizing Diversity for All. And which was a program that had evolved from a program called GLIF, Gay Lesbian Youth Preventing Homophobia. And these were programs that were situated inside of a rape crisis center to do teen education, attempting to interrupt those behaviors and patterns that often have their genesis in the school experience. To interrupt those patterns that lead to oppressive behavior later on. So it's like, how do we interrupt bullying and harassment, sexual harassment and bullying and homophobia in middle school and high school so that folks can, in those younger years, cultivate a sense of compassion and appreciation for diverse experiences. That shaped me and prepared me working in a politicized circus where we would go into juvenile detention centers and work with youth to do mask making or healing work for youth who were dealing with state systems and incarceration to bring more hope and help build skills to both value themselves and to feel and to find a sense of purpose. Um, so much of my training, I have no degrees, I have 0 degrees. I have no bachelor's, no this, no that, no PhDs. I really let life experiences shape me. And I've had my best learning in apprenticeship models of learning, where I tucked myself under the wing of someone who I saw doing work that inspired me and learned directly from a teacher in that sense. So, and to this day, I, prefer an apprenticeship any day over any formal structures of education, and am really committed to also being a mentor that apprentices others in the healing arts. Like, just that model of learning makes so much sense to me.
I'm with you on the value of having that direct experience, especially if you can get it under the tutelage of a good teacher. You and I spent time with the Strozzi Institute in Petaluma. I did my somatic coaching program there. I remember specifically when we had to spend time on concepts and theories, and mostly it was around practices and embodiment. But when we had to spend time on concepts and theories, it was my least favorite. The question that I would always ask is, well, what happened first? What came first? It wasn't the concept, it wasn't the theory, it was the behavior, the condition, or the habit. But once we started going into that headspace of talking about concepts and theories, we were further away from the thing. And now we were also establishing presets that we would squeeze ourselves into, or that we might squeeze the client into, somebody else into. And it would take away from the curiosity that you would have when you were in practice. So I definitely could see where academia and having these concepts and theories in the hopes of controlling something or getting our arms around it, it's a very reductive process. In addition to being reductive, it also puts this film over things where you can't always see directly what's there and what's happening. Going back to Strozzi, Strozzi is the connection. A person who did the somatic coaching program before me, Summer, we both know. And Summer was the one who introduced me to you and said, go get your body work with MawuLisa. I was having issues with my throat. And that's when I came to see you. And one of several things that I took away from my visit with you was your emphasis on these technologies, understanding the root of these technologies, where these technologies came from, and also us
practicing them for us and using these technologies on us. Can you talk a bit more about that and the importance of that?
Yeah. My years in Strozy and with generative somatics, I think I can remember a real sore point for me was when they talked about the lineage of the work, that I could never hear any mention of Indigenous, First Nations, or African contributions to the lineage of that work. That just felt really off to me in my bones, that, you know, there was no mention of those cultural contributions to a work that spoke so fundamentally in my soul. Like there was just a soul knowing. And later I came to discover an amazing craniosacral teacher out here in the Northeast that really reminded me, first of all, that the body work, that we practice, that's attributed to coming from polarity, the work of Randolph Stone, Moshe Feldenkrais, Ida Roth, many of these other names that are mentioned. But this particular craniosacral teacher um, was the first person that I heard just very straightforwardly naming that these systems of body work, like that have fed into polarity, osteopathy, craniosacral, that they have their roots in Cherokee bone setting. And
Mm.
that blew my mind. It's like, of course,
You just blew mine.
okay, that helps me
Yeah.
understand that. And then, I had another comrade in New Mexico that also helped me remember and understand that, one of the shapers, at least of somatic experiencing, Peter Levine, he did studies with Zulu shamans, and brought forward the technology of ritualized regression that directly was borrowed from African shamanistic practices that, I didn't come to discover that until I began to dive into these Afrocentric indigenous technologies myself and began to see the patterns and, things that far predated the European Eurocentric sources that were shared with us. Just feeling into and learning about these African indigenous systems that just far predated what was being cited for contributions. And I think what I had to reckon with is that our technologies, Afro-Indigenous technologies, we are oral tradition people. So our, our technologies are often not written down in books. It's a transmission, it's an oral transmission um, of the work. What gets credit here in the West is what's in a book and what's cited. It's the written word that is holds more weight than the oral transmission. And so, of course, it would be easy to lose sight of those African contributions when those things are coming from oral tradition, and how much easier it is to lean into those things that are planted in books and captured in the written word. So that was one thing that just like, right, um, I remember coming across concepts of center inside of Malidoma Patrice Somme's work that I'm like, I don't think Malidoma
Hmm.
studied at Strozzi. I could be wrong. I don't know at all, but I don't think that happened. And see so clearly in his writing concepts around center that I hear and could feel the traces of that being repeated inside of the somatic technology. I'm just like, okay. So I just, I felt it, and I couldn't rely on
Right.
someone else to validate that. I had to go and do my own work to find that for myself. And I'm so grateful for what I have been able to find in my explorations of Indigenous and African healing technologies that have contributed so much to embodiment, even I'm just thinking about the concept of fatiguing a system so that it's more open and receptive to new information coming in. Like that was something that would happen during some of these, multiple day somatic courses. This idea of fatigue the system so that the opening can happen. That is a part of the technology of grief rituals. You have people out on the land laboring together to build the grief shrine to you're cutting saplings and harvesting foliage and building this structure and carrying water for great distances from the river to, where it's needed. Like all of this collective work is you're working hard and you're fatiguing the system. By the time you've done all of that physical labor to prepare the ritual space, you don't have as many guards and defenses up. And when it's time to grieve, the grief is able to flow out with much more ease because you've literally done the work of fatiguing the system and breaking down some of the barriers and some of the armor that can be in the way of the somatic opening occurring. So just little things like that and piecing that together.
Yeah. I think there's something to you inherently recognizing that something's not quite right here. Similarly to you, the question I asked all throughout the coaching program intensive was, what is already here? When are we going to meet what's already here? Because I knew coming into it, I had some what's already here. I had my own personal work to do to uncover more of it, but I knew from my success inside of corporate, which I went in a different direction when I would work with executives and coaching them. I would meet and I would see and I would sense what was already there. I made no assumptions about what needed to be put in. I think that was the piece with Strozzi that really coming out of the program, I had to get back to myself and say, whoa, and remind myself, no, there was stuff already here. And that stuff is important. If anything, the program should enhance it, not replace it.
Mm-hmm.
I liken it to when I learned meditation. When I originally started meditating, the only thing that came to me was be still and know that I'm God. And so I started to still myself. There was no technology, there was no math, there was no method, there was no concept, no theory. Fast forward multiple years later, I have my son. I want to teach my son to meditate. I'm like, the way I do it, he's 6, he's not going to be able to drop into the silence like I do. I took him to learn TM, and I learned TM myself, Transcendental Meditation. It screwed me up because it replaced what was already there. I had to find peace all over again because I replaced what was already there with some other system. Strozzi was a like experience. I had been coaching, no certification, nothing, and having success in my roles. All of a sudden, it was like, is this supposed to, am I doing it wrong?
I
Is
mean,
this supposed to cover over what's already here?
what you're describing, Trish, which is clarifying for me so much in this moment, what you're describing is one of the basic components of colonizer mentality. You go and you strip away what's already there and you replace it with your own. That is a key strategy in colonization. So would we expect anything different?
Right, right. And I think it's the goodwill that it's wrapped in
Mm-hmm.
that we have to get smarter about recognizing. But how we do that is our own work in recognizing what's already here, because you knew on some instinctive level, you knew. I knew, but not everybody knows.
And I
So
don't want
I
to
want
knock
to
the goodwill.
now go into,
I don't
no,
want to
because the
knock
goodwill is important,
the
but
goodwill is
I think,
important.
right,
And we also have to listen to the truth of embodiment. We have all embodied white supremacy. And there's going to take a
yes,
lot of work to decolonize from that. But we have all that white supremacy has been a 500-year or more project. So of course we're going to have embodied that.
Yes,
And
yes.
so, yes, there's goodwill, and the goodwill can't erase 500 plus years of embodiment of white supremacy.
Yes, and I point out the goodwill to say that someone might question, how did I not recognize I was giving up parts of me? Or how did I get to a place where I am now struggling to access innate, inherent strengths, gifts, powers, call it what you may? To your point, it's so systemic, embodied by all of us on some level. It may not be recognizable a lot of the times, especially when goodwill is intended. So I appreciate the work that you're doing now and the journey that you're on, and really looking at things with the lens of decolonizing it. And the piece that I want to spring to and make sure that we do get to talk about is this veneration of the ancestors. Because I feel like in this moment of reclaiming, I mean, more than anything, oh my gosh, 2020, 25, let us reclaim that. Let us call on the ancestors who are willing, happy, ready, always available. It's just for us to have that awareness. And so tell me more about that.
Mm, my ancestors are everything. They are literally, all of my gifts, all of my talents, all of my strengths are inheritances from my ancestors. One thing that I am very aware of in this practice of ancestral veneration is that, you don't get to pick and choose your ancestors. Like, your ancestors are your ancestors. It's important to reckon with the wholeness and the totality of that. So in my bloodline, there are African ancestors and there are European ancestors and their First Nation Indigenous ancestors. And I have to reckon with all of them on such a profound level. All of my ancestors have led me to this place where I'm at in this moment. I thank my European ancestors for bringing me in the path of reparation minded white benefactors who are allowing me to support them in redistributing their wealth, their stolen generational wealth. I feel like I have my white European ancestors to thank for lining me up with the path and places that would lead me to that. I have my African ancestors to thank for leading me to this path back to Orisha and to this indigenous spiritual way of being, technology, cosmology, worldview, where I get to profoundly reconnect to a sense of power, a sense of wholeness, that prior to that moment, it was like walking around without shoes on. I can't even, I can't even imagine or reckon with, like, oh wow, life before embracing all of these parts of myself, life before that was very different and very hollow compared to how I get to feel in myself now that I have embraced those aspects of myself, opened myself to the power and potency of my cultural inheritances. Our ancestors um, are the closest gateway for us to divinity, and they 100% want us to win. It's also a relationship of reciprocity. So when we venerate them, when we honor them, when we offer energy, ashe, um, to them, that gives them the capacity and power to support us, to guide us, to offer us protection and resource. So being in a very deliberate and active practice of ancestral veneration has just opened so many incredible doors for me, has allowed me to sit squarely in the seat of myself and in the seat of my power in ways that, I just really feel the difference in my younger self. I feel like there's, MawuLisa pre-ancestor veneration years and post, and the difference is just um so potent. So it's so potent and so feelable. I trust myself in ways that I was never able to trust myself before. I hold myself in a sense of regard, um, and dignity that I wasn't able to access before. The healing and the empowerment with the support of ancestors, some of it I don't even know how to put words to it. It's
Right.
just such a, yeah, I have no words for the potency.
I feel like it's important for you to even vocalize that because I know when I was talking to you before, when we were talking about you being a guest on the podcast, I was acknowledging that meeting you, the thing that screams to me is she's so firmly grounded in who she is. She's so in touch with that power and so comfortable with that power. And so today I wanted to at least for those who are considering different paths to realize that this is not an overnight thing.
No,
This being so firmly grounded and having this deep sense of knowing that there was a path that you traveled that was not linear. And as you said, you had your years of trying things, it's a whole rich life
that's right.
to come to where you are now. So for anyone who's listening who will meet you and say, oh, yeah, I want that. Okay, that's fine. That's great. But let us give you a peek into what that journey is like. With that, and being in such a good place, there's always the stretch, there's always the hill to climb to get to the other side,
Hmm.
right? So what's the hill right now that you're climbing? What's the thing that's like requires more work?
We're going to be working till we die. Like, that's just the truth. Us until we take our last breath. In this moment, one of the things that I'm really working with is decolonizing love, learning to not overextend, but what does it really mean to center myself in relationship to others, not as an act of being self absorbed or selfish, but to
Right.
really center myself so that I am connected to my core, my gifts, my power, my agency, my capacity to be generative and not reactive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in that journey, because I find myself practicing love inside of a polyamorous construct, that's very different from the monogamous constructs that I've previously been practicing in. It's really been an invitation to decolonize around love, to recognize and be an advocate for my needs, the things that, yeah, to reckon with jealousy and
Yeah. I was just saying, for all that you were saying you want to do in terms of centering yourself, coming in it with your wholeness, coming in it with your agency and all these things, if ever a place to test it is in a polyamorous relationship, that will
absolutely,
be a teacher
it is a potent teacher.
and lay the ground for. Yeah.
It is a potent
Yeah. Yeah.
teacher. I'm having a really, I don't want to say beautiful, I guess it is a beautiful in some way. It's a potent journey um of jealousy being a teacher for me. And recognizing that the things that I'm jealous about are actually unmet needs. And what gets to happen when I find my agency to go and get those needs met? How
Mm.
does that impact the jealousy? Does it quiet it? Does it, for a time it does, and then it flares up again. And then I get to sit with what need or want or desire is that, revealing. I've also had to apprentice with possessiveness, possession. What is mine? And actually, what is it to bow into more of a collective reality of like, oh, what gets to be shared? What actually isn't mine? Like, why am I trying to possess another person? Like, what is that? There's security in it. And I can also create that security by communicating in potent and powerful ways what my needs and wants are. To ask for the things that I need, to say no to the things that I don't need, to hold my ground, to hold myself in dignity and self regard as I do that, to hold those around me with dignity and self regard, as I'm navigating all of that. It's a rondori.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a whole practice. So yeah, I'm still in it. I'm still in it. I don't know what wisdom I have on that front. I'm still trying to learn my lessons and gather my wisdoms in it. But I know that there is something here that gets to be in service to my evolution, even when it feels hard, even when it feels
Yes.
painful and unbearable. I can really feel that there is something in this setup that was divinely designed to support my growth and my evolution as a human being on this planet. And I'm grateful for that. And it's fucking hard.
Yeah. That's just the truth.
The truth. That's the
That's
truth. It's
just the
so
truth.
hard.
Well, the good thing that another person that I'm speaking to in the series, she said one of her learning lessons and insights was like, and guess what? We can do hard things.
That's
That
right.
was her big lesson. So thank God for that.
Yes.
Speaking of insights, we're past the hour. I feel like we could keep going. I would love to keep going, but I know it's evening. And guess what? We're spending Valentine's Day together. We'll let them know that.
Happy day of love.
So happy day of love. What insights, what takeaways you'd like to share with listeners? I know for me, one of the things that I love about you and why I wanted to definitely have you as a guest is because I felt it was so important for people to recognize and especially other women of color who are aspirational or who are trying to figure it out to be able to see that, okay, the journey has its curves. And to get to this place of this deep sense of knowing that can take time and that it's different for everyone. When you see somebody or you meet somebody and they feel really grounded and they have this deep sense of knowing, to also bring with that, yes, the admiration, but also maybe get curious about what the path was like, and that there's definitely insights and takeaways that we can give to each other that will serve us in our journey. So that's why I love talking to you. The other piece was the more that we could do that and get curious about each other's journeys and stories and ask the questions and not just make assumptions about how easy it was or whatever, the more we can, I don't know, allow ourselves to be that for other people. You don't put on this image of I've got it all together. I have all the answers.
Ooh,
You're very
because
frank
I
about look,
don't.
I'm in the midst of this.
I'm a holy hot mess
I'm in
out
the midst
here.
of this. I say that to say that's okay. That's actually par for course.
It
That's
is.
actually par for course. So, what insights would you share with listeners?
Don't ever expect your journey to look like anybody else's. Actually, trust that voice, that inner voice in your gut. It's probably the most reliable thing out here. Yeah. Practice self possession. Practice self possession because when you vacate yourself, you leave yourself open to be possessed by others. So,
And filled up with other
and
shenanigans, for
filled up
sure.
with other
For sure.
shenanigans. Exactly. become a apprentice in your own self-possession. Um, and, um, find good teachers out there. I don't think I would be anywhere without excellent teachers. And even as you find good teachers, put no one on a pedestal. Put no one on a
Put no one on a
pedestal.
pedestal.
Put no one on a pedestal. Say, save the pedestal for Orisha. There's my
Yeah, yeah. And
put
that's a
no
good
one.
place to go next before we wrap. Yeah. What's next for MawuLisa? What are you working on? What's to come?
I have a little heart project that I've been working on, cultivating a podcast called Save the Pedestal for Orisha, practicing centered ego and right sizing relationships in polycules and social networks. And it's a vast topic, but I was really inspired by that topic because of ways in my own life that I have wrecked myself by putting others on pedestals. And the podcast, explores why we do that in the first place, what pedestalization takes care of. I think I might have made up that word, pedestalization, but I love it. I'm sticking with it. What it takes
I
care
like it.
of.
Hashtag.
Hashtag pedestalization. What it takes care of, why we do it, what's the cost of it to ourselves, to others, in the practice of doing something different, how to be right sized in one's own ego, not to be overflated or underflated, but how do you really practice being centered in your ego? Part of that is, I think, recognizing both the divinity in yourself and the divinity of all of life around you. If you can hold that as a premise, it's really hard to objectify or abuse or mistreat anything. If you really hold that everything around you is a manifestation of divinity, that everything around you is sacred, including yourself. If that's our come from, I think it's a recipe for much better behavior towards self and others. So there's exploration around that and so much more, so much more. I'm looking to unfold in its organic way.
Well, thank you for taking this time with me. Is there anything else that you wanted to leave listeners with? And we've had a good conversation. We've packed in a lot, and I've enjoyed it. I could probably go longer, but I probably should let you go.
Yeah, I think mostly I want to just say don't give in to the fear and despair of this current political moment. That
Yeah.
there is strategy being enacted upon us to shock and awe with the rapid fire of craziness that's being delivered, the attacks on people's constitutional rights and um, people's very personhood. There's strategy here to overwhelm us. It's a deliberate attempt, shock and awe. That's a whole ass strategy. I think that it is really a moment to tend to your nervous system, to practice building deep bonds in community. This is not the moment for shallow relationships. This is a moment for cultivating deep relationships because it's our relationships that are going to carry us through this moment. And to know that we require rest in order to heal. Conditions will always invite us into a grind, and there is work to be done. And just like the sun shines for a portion of the day and then it doesn't, everything in nature has to rest. And we have to find that for ourselves so that we have the energy that we need and require for the struggles that are ahead of us. And may you do something every single day that resources you, whether that is singing karaoke with abandon, dancing to your favorite song, taking the time to not feed the fast food industry and slow cook and prepare food at home that gets to be medicine and actually nourishes you. Um, yeah, I think those are some of the things that I would like to pepper in as advice or words of wisdom.
Thank you, MawuLisa. Thank
You're
you.
so welcome.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Self Centered Living. If you have enjoyed it and it has been beneficial in any way, I would love to hear from you. Please email me at info@self-centeredliving.com. Our music is Tide Turns by Ketsu. Our show notes include information about our participants. I'll meet you back here for next week's episode. Take care until then.